A good evening that you're all well and that your families are healthy. It is currently 7 o'clock. We're going to be waiting 5 minutes to allow more folks to join onto the town hall, and then we'll get started with introductions and moving into questions. So hang tight for 5 minutes, and then we'll get started. Thank you. Seeing some more folks hop on. So, if you're at the RUSA Town Hall, you're in the right place. Thank you for coming. And we'll get started in about 3 minutes or 4 minutes at 7:05. So for the 20 folks who just joined, welcome, good evening. This is the RUSA Town Hall, and we'll be starting in about 2 minutes. So more folks still joining on, so we'll wait a minute and then we'll get started. All right, good evening. This is the RUSA Town Hall on the fall semester and COVID-19 operating status. There are still folks coming to the call, so everyone's welcome to keep joining the event as it goes on. But in brief introduction, my name is Nicholas LaBelle. I have the honor to serve the student body as this year's Rutgers Student Body President, and we have a ton of great panelists on the call today to answer questions that were gathered over the past week across all parts of the university, as well as having a portion of Q&A tonight. So to walk through how the event's going to work, we're going to have introductions from our panelists, and that'll be in alphabetical order. So they'll be saying, their name, their title, and a sentence of what they do at the university. Following the introduction period, I'll be asking questions that were already prepared. So we'll be asking them to a certain person, and they can then answer in a given time frame. And that'll be like an hour and a half. And then for the last 20 and a half hour of the event, if you're on the WebEx as an attendee, in the bottom corner, there is a Q&A function. So if you have a question for our panelists, please type that question in that box, and then we can record it and make sure it's asked during that portion of the event. So we're hoping that a lot of the questions are answered in the preset question, but we want to have the student voice heard. So if you guys have any questions you want to have put to the panelists, please utilize that function as well. So with that being said, I'm more than happy to introduce our panelists. So we'll start off with the alphabetical order of Brian Barry, and then we can go down alphabetically. So Director Barry, the floor is yours.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks, Nicholas. My name is Brian Barry. I'm the Director of Financial Aid in New Brunswick. I am responsible for awarding and administering all federal, state, institutional, and private funding for New Brunswick, and that totals about $500 million. So I will be happy to answer any questions you have this evening.
Then we have Director Bills.
Hello. Good evening, everybody. I'm David Bills, Director of Career Communities and Transitions for Rutgers Career Exploration and Success, and so we help students with those things, internships and jobs, and so what I do is supervise our career advisors and all of our campus partnerships.
Thank you, Director Charette.
Sorry. Hi, my name is Joe Charette, and I am the Executive Director of Dining Services for the New Brunswick campuses, and our job is pretty obvious. We make sure everyone is well fed on campus.
Thank you. Vice-Chancellor Lasky.
Hi, everyone. I'm Melodee Lasky. I'm the Assistant Vice Chancellor for Health and Wellness on the New Brunswick campus, Student Affairs, as well as the Associate Vice President for Student Health Services, working with the student health services across the university in general. On New Brunswick campus, I oversee student health, CAPS, HOPES, VPVA, and I also work with Recreation, Dave Williams, who is here. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Director G. Lee.
Hi, everyone. I go by she and her pronouns. I'm the Executive Director for Intercultural Engagement and Inclusion Initiatives. I oversee the 4 cultural centers as well as the Division of Student Affairs inclusion-related projects and initiatives.
Thank you. Next, you got it.
Hello, my name is Salvador Mena. I serve as the Vice-Chancellor for Student Affairs. Student Affairs is comprised of a number of departments that are intended to support the overall student experience outside of the classroom. Those include some of the ones that you've heard of, like dining, CAPS, residence life, recreation, just to name a few. Thank you. I look forward to the conversation.
Hello, I'm Carolyn Moehling. I'm the Vice Provost for Undergraduate Education, and I'm responsible for overseeing everything related to undergraduate education in New Brunswick. I work with the schools on their curricula and thinking about how to prepare faculty for the fall. So that's some of the questions I'll be answering tonight.
Hi, everyone. This is Provost Moghe. I am excited to be here as part of this town hall. I've been a faculty for about 25 years at Rutgers, so certainly know what academics involves. And I'm the Chief Academic Officer and the Chief Research Officer for Rutgers New Brunswick. And great to be here.
Hi, I'm Jack Molenaar. I'm the Senior Director of Transportation Services, which covers everything busing and parking, and soon to be some other alternative modes of transportation, which we'll get into later. Thanks.
Good evening. This is Dan Morrison. I'm the Executive Director of Residence Life. I use he, him, and his pronouns. And I oversee all the residence halls and the activities therein in New Brunswick. And I am the chief liaison to the housing department, which is who bills students for their housing, as well as oversees the facilities and maintenance on residence halls.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ann Newman. I serve as the Associate Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs and Dean of Students. So I work with Dr. Mena in the Student Affairs, and I oversee the advocacy units within Student Affairs.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Bill O'Brien. I'm the Executive Director for Student Centers and Activities, and we play an integral role, as Dr. Mena mentioned, about providing that student experience and vibrant campus life throughout the university with vibrant programs, leadership opportunities, program service, as well as the operations within the student centers.
Hey, good evening, everybody. My name is Dave Williams. I work for the Division of Affairs, Executive Director for Recreation. My goal is to improve the health and well-being of all the students on campus, and I do that with all of our divisional and university partners, across the board to help you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Kerri Willson. I'm the Director of Off-Campus Living and Community Partnerships, and I work with students who are transitioning to living off campus, helping students know what their rights are as tenants and their responsibilities are as community members. We also run the Rutgers Student Food Pantry and work with all of our faith-based communities. And today I brought my colleague, Dean Joanne Arnholt from Fraternity and Sorority Affairs, in case any questions come up pertaining to Greek life. Looking forward to talking with you tonight.
Well, thank you all for coming. We have a very wide set of panelists, as you can see today: financial aid, housing, academics, off-campus living. So we try to bring together everyone we can to get to the heart of Rutgers issues. And so we're going to start off now with questions to the panelists, and we're going to go down into about the next hour and a half on those questions. So with that said, this question is directed towards Director Berry in financial aid. Many students have made their concerns known about the cost of tuition this coming semester. How is your office in financial aid working to support students and make the semester more affordable?
Sure. Thanks, Nicholas, for the question. So we know that this, COVID-19 has been challenging financially for many. If you are, for those of you who are on the call who are continuing students, you have received, if you've had a financial aid application on file, you received your financial aid offer letters probably either early this week or last week. Some of those awards had been adjusted due to housing status. So we're getting a lot of questions about additional funding. So first of all, I want to talk about how we'll support you that way. So for those of you who were here in spring, we had announced about the COVID-19 emergency application and the CARES funding. We had awarded about 11,500 students in New Brunswick a little over $9.5 million. The money that was not used, we are rolling that to the fall. So if you have any type of financial need, we are driving students to that application first. The application will reopen on Monday, July 27th. We will be sending out a notification to all students who have a 2021 FAFSA on file, because that is one of the requirements through the federal government. We are also, we will have the application up probably for a few weeks until funds are exhausted. And then in our FAQs, we do have the link to the landing page in the actual application where you can list whether it's technology needs, rent, food, childcare, any expenses, related to, your living and well-being. You just hit the application and then we will review that and award you accordingly. The second round would be really looking at, we had a lot of questions about the Scarlet Promise grant. So that need-based award is institutional funding that we have. We will be, that is pretty much included in all in aid packages that we sent out. We do have an appeal process, so if students do need additional funds, you can email or submit an appeal form to our office, and then we'll review for additional funding. We had been holding off on awarding students any additional aid through appeals if you have emailed our office until the university had made an official decision about housing and what the exact plans would be for the fall. One other thing, we do have students and families have been affected by loss of employment, loss in business income. So we call that our change in family circumstance process, where if your family income looks different than it did, when you filed your FAFSA, because we used income from 2 years ago, you can submit a change in family circumstance form to our office. So we will, my staff will review your eligibility, see if any additional federal or state grants that you're eligible for, and then we'll award you accordingly. So our staff is working around the clock. Our call center is open. We do have our one-stop student services center responding to students via email. So, if you have any additional questions, I'll be happy to answer more toward the end.
Thank you, Director Berry. And then not to, ask too many questions, but we have 2 follow-ups on that point. So that being said, the first follow-up would be several students have reached out about financial holds for the summer semester and affecting their fall registration. Is your office considering moving holds with understanding of their family circumstances, or how is the hold situation for the fall semester?
Sure, I have to get a rough total on I don't have a total on the summer holds. It could be for a variety of reasons. Typically, the student accounting offices place holds for those reasons. Typically, if a student hasn't paid or has a parking holds for the summer, I would say if, in working with our office, if we can, help students out with additional Scholar Promise for summer, to contact our office. And then we work closely with student accounting to lift holds and make sure that students can register for fall. So we did not put any holds for past due balances in spring. That was decided on university-wide, so students could register for fall. But if you do have an outstanding balance still for summer, for a group of students, that will prevent you from registering for fall. But if you contact our office, we'll work with you to see what we can do to help you with the balance. You can also use CARES funds for that as well.
Thank you, Dr. Berry. And then a further question, just, a lot of students asked about student employment, that your office, works with work study. So can you talk about the status of work study in the fall? And if so, on what scale will it exist?
Sure. So new and continuing students have all been awarded work study. We are currently, we'll be gathering additional data from our campus partners to determine the needs of some offices. We do know that number will be reduced. We will not have the amount of students employed on campus work study or non-work study for this coming fall. Our priority will go to continuing students. So if you had a job, we will try to place you back in your current role. The federal work study program does allow students to work remotely. So if your office, just say for financial aid, if we happen to be a hybrid or remote, our students will be employed remotely. So if you are able to do remote work, you can still keep your federal work study position. But just due to the sheer volume of what campus will look like in the fall, there will be some offices who will not need the number of students that they needed in previous years. So we're still working out those numbers, but the federal work study program will still be there for the fall.
All right, thank you, Director Berry. The next question we have is directed towards Director Morrison from Housing. So I'll ask it now. How is residence life providing for the following communities? International students, out-of-state students, ROTC students, and those in need? And then do students need to reapply for housing, and is there a certain length for that application?
So let's start with the second question first. So any undergraduate student who was under contract with us, or new students who were applying but not yet assigned, If they believe that they fit one of the parameters to move back onto campus, they do need to fill out a new application. That's through the same portal that everybody uses, the oncampus.rutgers.edu portal. But it is a reapplication. We actually had to nullify or withdraw every application and assignment. Was the only way to make this process work. So that process started the day the announcement came out, and students need to apply by Sunday the 19th, that's this coming Sunday, at 11:59 p.m. is the deadline. So that's the easy part of your question. Right now, we've been working with, especially starting with the international students, has been a group of folks that we've been working with since really the spring break, extended spring break that started this process. At that time, we had about 1,800 international students living with us. Many of them stayed with us. They weren't able to go home or had not had the means to get home. And those numbers have reduced now to about 400. Many students who still could not get home found it cheaper to actually move off campus for the summer because there were so many places available. So we are still working with that same group of students. They are still eligible to live with us. Incoming international students are really going to be the group that is most challenged to physically get to Rutgers. We've been working with the Rutgers Global Office and finding out that most folks are not able to get a visa to enter the country, regardless of the decision that was made today about remote. This is about simply travel. So we are working with the international students who cannot get home yet, and they are welcome to live with us or wherever else they choose to live. For the out-of-state students, we have to remember that the whole process for who is living on campus came out of decisions made by the Emergency Operations Committee that was handling all of the COVID-19 issues for Rutgers, that really made the decision for safety reasons to have as few students living on campus as possible, and to only use apartments and suites where students would have a private bedroom and only share a bathroom with one or two people, which we feel is the healthiest, safest way to do things. So having said that, the other piece that is a part of this decision for out-of-state students is really the type of classes that you'll be taking and what your major actually requires. So just because you have an in-person class doesn't mean you're going to automatically be granted permission to live on campus, because most classes can be done in both remote or in person. There's really a pretty small number of academic programs for undergraduate students that are requiring students to be on campus because they're requiring them to be in some kind of in-person environment. We've reached out to lots of the academic programs. We found most undergraduate students are not going to be expected to live on campus. There are some exceptions: fifth-year pharmacists, fourth-year nurses, folks who are at the end of their academic program that really their expectation is to be present and doing things face-to-face. So out-of-state students who meet the requirements to live on campus are certainly welcome to do so, but simply being from out of state is not a reason enough to be granted permission to live on campus. And the other units that you've talked about, the ROTC units, for example, we have several different groups that are approaching us kind of as a block, asking for decisions, and we're going to be going through that, looking at all of the different parameters, starting with safety, right? It's important that people be able to finish their academic programs, but it's also important that we keep everybody safe. So we're still analyzing those questions, but we'll have decisions for that very, very quickly. The last group, as you said, students in need, and that is a group that some of us use different descriptors for. Sometimes we call it housing insecurity, people who may not have a place to go home to, or Rutgers is their home, or students whose home environment is not conducive to academics. We've heard from students telling us everything from, my uncle and aunt lost their job, they and their kids are now living with us, and there's 6 of us in a 2-bedroom apartment, right? And so we're very aware of that. We're working with the deans of students and the academic advisors. Whoever may hear about this student that is having that problem, contact us and we will make sure that they get on campus. So we're really trying to balance need, safety, et cetera, for all of those groups.
Thank you, Dr. Morrison. And on that point of, the need categorization, this is a follow-up for yourself and Dr. Mena if he wants to comment. Due to the housing being limited, how is priority being determined? So what metrics are you using for housing insecurity or adverse home conditions? And then for those that are denied housing, is an appeals process in the works?
Yeah, I think the first part of your question really is there are many students who we are aware of in the student affairs arena who have housing issues. We're aware of them. The deans of students and others already have connections with those. So we're not having to vet them too drastically. And we really don't want to send a mixed signal. We don't want people to say, well, I just want to live on campus, so I'm going to say I have housing insecurity. That's not fair or correct. But the opposite of that is you don't want someone to have to jump through so many hoops that they're not going to jump through them to get into a safe place. So that's really our balance. We really don't force the issue too much, but we usually ask some questions because often if you have housing insecurity in some fashion, you probably have other needs as well. There may be financial needs. You might need to work with Kerri Willson's area, potentially with the food pantry or other things. So we try to work it through that way, but we're also conscious that many of the students who are having these needs may have problems with their parents. We know that some of our gay, lesbian, and transgender students can't actually have frank conversations in the house that they're having to talk to about this so they can get safe. So we really try to listen with a third ear, look between the lines, and we're not really going to doubt anybody if they really seem in need. What was the other question? I can't remember. Oh, about appeals. Students may always appeal decisions in residence life. That's who we are. We affect where people live, right? And so this is a 24/7 kind of world. And so to make a quick decision that may not be made with all the right information, or someone left something out, they may always appeal, and especially in this kind of situation. We're hoping to get this done by the end of July, early August, to get everybody assigned. But as you know, that's still 3 or 4 weeks before classes begin. We still have room to juggle and shuffle. If we've missed something, or if a student forgot to send a document that we need to support their argument, we'll always listen.
And just so students know, is that appeal found on your website or via email? What works best in your office?
There's not an official appeal form, but we'll add this to our FAQs to make sure people understand. But it would be an appeal to our assignments office, and then I would be the final decision maker.
All right, thank you, Dr. Morrison. And then, on the topic of Dean of Students, we have Associate Vice Chancellor Newman with us tonight. So a question for her: what is the Dean of Students doing to help students in the fall with their emergency assistance fund? And then a second question, being that classes are almost 100% online, how can students without access to technology get help from your office?
Hi, everyone. Thank you for that question. The Dean of Students office was really busy in spring semester and the summer with the Student Emergency Fund. I actually also have to thank some of the student organizations and RUSA for providing money to the emergency fund. So we were able to give out a little over $200,000 in the Student Emergency Fund. Most of that COVID related because students lost their job, families lost their job, people needed money for apartments, for rent, for food. So we were very busy, and we continue to be available to give money through the Student Emergency Fund. We've been working really closely with the Office of Financial Aid, so the CARES funds are available, and we've been in addition to that for a lot of students. For international students and DACA students who didn't qualify for CARES funding, we are available, and we can give money through the Student Emergency Fund to those students. So if you contact the Dean of Students office, the easiest way is through Dean of Students at echo.rutgers.edu, and I can make sure I put that in the chat. we'll be able to get in touch with you, provide you an application, and speak with you. In the spring semester and this summer, the Dean of Students Office has been available to help students with technology needs. So the Chancellor's Office gave us a number of laptops that we are giving away to students, not loaning. And we do still have some of those available. We've also been able to access Visa cards and other means with which for students to purchase internet access if they need it, knowing that not everyone has Wi-Fi access at their homes, and it's not like you can go to Starbucks anymore to get that. So again, if you contact the Dean of Students Office and you let us know what your technology needs are, we can help either provide that to you or point you in the right direction. The university has provided quite a bit of software for free through the Office of Information Technology. So we have lists of that and information from them. But if it's not available, we'll work with you to see what you need and see if we can provide that for you.
Thank you, Vice Chancellor Newman. That's a great answer. And University was very happy to partner with your office as well in the Recovery Fund, and we look forward to doing that next year. So thank you for all you've done in the past semester. Moving away from current Rutgers students into the job market, this question is directed towards Director Bills. So I think many of us were that we are currently living through one of the worst job markets in global history. So for many, education provides the pathway to a meaningful employment and the hope of a better life. So how is Career Services working to ensure Rutgers students remain competitive in our current job market? I think my mic might have cut off. So the question is for Director Bills, just asking, what is Career Services working to ensure Rutgers students remain competitive in our current job market? There might be some issues on the technical end. So if your mic does work, let us know, and then we can ask the questions at a later time. But I think this mic's having some issues. So in that case, we can move on to the next question. So whenever you get the mic to work again, Director Bills, we can ask that question. So, okay, so since that's not working at the moment, the next question is for Senior Director Molenaar. So students are wondering about the aspect of parking on campus in the fall and outstanding holds. So is your department considering more forgiving policies related to current parking financial holds?
One of the things we did, and we did this, the university did it with all the holds, is we made sure that any tickets that were given to students during, when we were here during the spring semester, we put them all on appeal, which made it so there was no holds on any registration for any student for the spring semester. And we'll continue doing that, and then I'm sure the university will have a discussion in a couple of months whether we're going to do that for the next spring semester. But we made sure that everyone could register for fall and summer classes, and the tickets didn't put them on any hold for that. So we made sure that we did the work on that. So that was something we'll consider as we go forward, because the university will look at that as a university-wide policy.
Thank you. And then again with parking, what is the outlook on parking for the campus in the fall?
Well, based on the attendance that we're starting to see of what it's going to be and what it's not going to be, we're looking at a fairly, a very less restrictive parking regulations than New Brunswick campus has ever seen, probably since cars were invented. You will be able to buy a commuter permit and be able to park on every campus. You don't have to stay on one campus. The whole goal is to try to make sure that we do not pack people into buses. So our rules are going to be more similar to what our summer parking rules are, which is a lot more flexibility because there'll be a lot more parking available. So we can allow that sort of movement, and we won't create a large traffic problem, and it will give a little bit more freedom and more social distancing, which is what we need to do during this. So that's one thing. The other thing we're also going to do, so we're going to have a resident permit. We're also looking at allowing two types of commuter permits. One for anyone who's just coming, needs to come. Also, we're looking at a permit if people live off campus and are living off campus in the apartments, that they'll be able to park their cars overnight, 24 hours, so they don't have, because we're hearing that a lot of the city of New Brunswick a lot of apartments are rented out. So it'll be a resident type permit where they can store their car in the Livingston campus. We still can't let them store it on the College Avenue campus. We're still a little bit restricted, but we're not sure how much of a capacity we'll have on College Avenue. So I'm going to be a little careful about that. If we see that there's space, we'll work that in. And we'll of course have resident permits. The other thing we're going to do is we're also going to allow for students to buy online if they need to come in for a day. They can buy a daily pass easily on an app. We have a new mobile app through a company that we started up last year, and there's going to be no restrictions on a student how many times that they want to buy the daily, which is 535. So they could go on and just do that and then park in the same lots that you would do with the commuter permit. So if someone only needs to come in, say 3 times for the semester, we're going to have that capability, which makes it really easy to do. So the cool thing is, if you're on the Bush campus and you want to get pizza at the Olive Branch, you now could drive there.
Thank you, Director Moehling. And the question, because not everyone has cars off campus or on campus, what is the availability schedule of buses in the fall? And then as a follow-up to that, what is the status of micromobility at Rutgers New Brunswick?
So with the buses, we've been going back and forth because we have to keep looking at what the restrictions are. Is there going to be a requirement of a 6 feet social distance or not? And what we're basically doing is we're trying to make a system, and we're redoing the whole system, making express routes so that right now there's not a 6 foot distance, but it could be reimposed. So we're trying to make a system that is as flexible as possible and as streamlined as possible. So right now it's in draft form. We don't have final approval, but it'll be nothing. Hopefully we'll get this approved and it'll be a new system that all the route names will be changed. It'll be completely different than what you've experienced before with the buses. And the goal is to require everyone to wear a mask and try to minimize the packing in buses. And that is why we're redoing the whole system and really looking at it to make it work efficiently for what's going to happen or could happen during this semester. Regards to on top of that, with micromobility, we've signed a contract with a e-scooter and e-bike share company, and they'll have e-scooters and e-bikes here for the fall semester. And there'll be rentals, it'll be a charge, just like in other cities. And the company that we signed a contract with is called VO Ride.
All right, thank you, Director Molenaar. So keep your eyes peeled for the new scooters on campus for those that are to be off campus or in that area. And then we'll attempt one more time if Director Bills has his mic working, we can ask him that question. So if you have your mic working, feel free to try.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear. Excellent. Okay. So just to reiterate the question for you, this is one of the worst job markets in American history. A lot of students are worried about how their education is going to help them post-Rutgers, even getting internships now. So how is your Office of Career Services working to ensure that Rutgers students remain competitive in our current job market?
Okay, good. That's a great question. I think that's on everybody's mind. We're doing one of the things I'll talk about is the workshops that we're doing special for the COVID-19 situation, and we're taking a lot of questions from students about concerns about finding work and internships. So what we've done is, of course, like most departments or all departments across the campus, we've gone virtual with all our services, and we're doing a lot of appointments for students to talk about their individual plans for career search. And also we have drop-in sessions, no appointment necessary for resumes and LinkedIn consulting. Also, we're doing some resume drops, which we hadn't done before. Students can submit a resume and have someone get back to them in the next couple days with some advice, and that's proved pretty popular. We've always done a lot of joint programs with employers, the recruiters that come to campus from all different types of organizations, but we're doing more and more workshops with with them. And you could find all the information for workshops and appointments through Rutgers Handshake. And it's real important. You just need to go in and activate your account. If you haven't done that, you'll get emails that are targeted for you. We have a lot of information on social media too. I just don't want to forget that. But back to the employers, we have on Thursday, for instance, Maximus is an employer that is hiring for all different types of areas. They got a big contract in New Jersey, and they're doing a behavioral interviewing workshop, which is the type of interviewing that students sometimes struggle with a little bit. And so we have programs like that continually. We're also doing career fairs virtually. So on October 1st and 2nd, we have it's going to be a big 2-day fair, and so many of employers will be there. And this is the first time we're hosting one, but we were involved in one back in April for the Big Ten, and that went really well. We also have the Student Alumni Career Connect system through our website, which is Rutgers alumni willing to help, and that is seeing increased activities that you could ask for informational interviews, career advice, and that kind of thing. And we're continuing to do the types of workshops that we've always done, and that information again is on our website. But we're doing new programs. So we have COVID-19 job search boosters, and we've run them since the spring. We have a few this summer, and we're doing it into the fall. And during those programs, we've gotten as many questions by students at the Q&A portion. And of course, the concerns are about the job search and the job market. So we also instituted a program series called Ask Us Anything. And that's proving successful as well. And we have them throughout the summer and also in the fall.
All right, well, thank you, Director Bills. We're glad that your mic got to work, so you had some good information for the students. So thank you for
I'm glad too. Thank you.
Answering that question. Thank you. Next, we have a question that's directed towards a few panelists about safety and health. So this is directed towards Director Morrison, Director Charette, and Director Willams. So how do you all plan to establish proper health and safety standards on campus in your respective areas, as well as working with Vice-Chancellor Lasky on maintaining those standards?
Because we work as a team anyway. We didn't need the pandemic to bring us to this point. And so, we work daily on efforts to improve the health and well-being of our students. Clearly, in a global pandemic, those efforts are emphasized further. And so it's one of our main pillars as we focus on the fall semester is how we address, the health and well-being of our students, because we recognize that it's important for their academic success. And so now, granted, we're in an online environment. It'll probably be a 2-step forward, 1-step back kind of approach as we go back and forth with whatever the pandemic's doing at the time. But it's not going to stop our efforts, whether we're online, remote, hybrid, or some in-person activities.
Okay, and that is obviously a regulated business. We're inspected by the local health authorities, and some of the guidelines that are not already in place are being recreated. If you're not in New Jersey, if you don't pay attention to the Jersey news, you might not even be aware of the fact that in the state of New Jersey, indoor dining is not yet allowed. So as far as health and safety goes, we are moving full steam ahead with a variety of scenarios depending on what may be in place at the time you all return to campus. So for example, all of our employees will be screened on a daily basis. We're trying to adapt all doors, whether they be entrance doors, bathrooms, whatever, to where they could be touchless. We're making sure that as you enter the dining hall, that you're going to have a system where you're not going to have to hand your ID card to a person who hands it back to you and does that over and over again all day long. We'll try to have a contactless ID exchange. And then there'll be social distancing stickers on the floors. People will be required to wear masks. There'll be new hand sanitizer stations in various places. And then as you pass through food lines, there's likely to be a plexiglass barrier between our food servers and you. So self-serve food items is clearly something of the past, at least for a while. We're not going to have multiple people over food and using the same utensils to dip in and serve themselves. Our staff will either be making food for you by your request, or if we're not able to have people eat in the dining rooms, we'll have tremendous amounts of food that's ready to pick up and go. And as if it were today, that would be our system, that the food would be prepackaged. There'll be all new nutritional work done on it, and foods will be available based on inquiries we've made with the industry to find out if there are any restrictions on what will be readily available. So we've had to change some recipes, change some combinations of foods so that they're more conducive to carry out, less liquids and those sorts of things. But even places where you would normally pick up condiments, they'll all be portion controlled packets. Places where you pick up beverages, will actually be an attendant there pouring beverages for you. There'll be a lot of changes that if you've eaten anywhere, you've probably already seen. Things are different than they were when you all left campus. And we're going to make health and safety our #1 priority. Quality of the food that we buy is going to be the same, that the talent in the kitchen is going to be the same, but the ability to keep students separated, even if we do open up for interior dining. If you looked over the balcony in Broward right now, you would see all 2 tops in there, 6 feet apart, designed to have 1 student at each table. So as the conditions change in the state, we're ready to change along with that and be able to maintain those standards in every way possible, and most likely beyond what's being asked of us.
I'll just go real quickly. This is Dan in Residence Life. We've been studying kind of the patterns of things within the residence halls. So the decision to only use suites and apartments, as I mentioned earlier, was so we did not have to use the gang bathrooms or the community bathrooms in traditional halls. So that took the whole question of cleaning those so often and having so many people, it took that really off the board, which made things a little simpler. But our housing facilities folks have been studying kind of all the different surfaces that we have, looking at their cleaning patterns, what they'll be cleaning, what we call high touch surfaces, doorknobs, stairwells, railings, those things. But beyond that, we've taken an inventory of all the buildings that will be open and the size of their lounges and how much furniture are in those lounges. And most of our lounges actually have more furniture than they probably need, but certainly in a distancing way, there's a lot more furniture than we can have. So some will have furniture removed, some will actually be locked down because there's no way to kind of control a pretty small environment. We'll be having hand sanitizers out. There'll be a lot of messaging around the students who live on campus, reminding them to keep themselves and their neighbors safe. We actually we'll have a no visitor policy, no guest policy for students on campus. You may have a guest in your room who also lives in your building, but no one from outside the building, no one from off campus. No one can share the room, even though many of our students are going to be in a room that has 2 beds. Only one student will be assigned there, and no one else can sleep in that other bed. We really have to make sure that people understand those things. So we're going to do the things with barriers, with one-way traffic, with controlling, trying to help people understand how many people to be on an elevator, those things. But a lot of this really has to come from all of us doing what's kind of logically correct. We certainly don't have monitors in every hallway and every lobby, and we're really going to rely on each other to keep ourselves safe.
Thank you, Director Morrison. In the sake of time, I want to mention 2 things. So first of all, for anyone in attendance, the Q&A box is at the bottom right of your screen if you want to ask a question for the panelists later, or you can also hit the 3 dots on your thing and it will say Q&A and you can ask there. And then secondly, I might have to cut some panelists off, so if I give you little signs, I'm not trying to be rude, I'm saying that we're trying to keep the schedule, so thank you for that. That being said, the next question is for our Assistant Vice Chancellor Lasky, who's an MD, and the question is such: while many students may not be on campus, many of us have experienced more stress due to academic concerns or personal loss during this time. So how are CAPS and HOPE planning to operate to best support students who rely on Rutgers Health Services? And then in addition, will health stations like Cortado be open? And for students who got their prescriptions from Walgreens/CVS, How will that work in the fall semester?
Hi, everybody. I think we need to acknowledge the difficulty the pandemic and remote education has provided for many of us. But I think we also need to keep in mind that, Rutgers students are really resilient. And so what we want to be able to do is to really support that resiliency that we know that we can help with our students. And so we're prepared within CAPS. We are open now. We will continue to be open. We will utilize mostly the teletherapy modality, and we will offer almost all of our usual services, individual therapy, group therapy, workshops. The popular Let's Talk has now been renamed into Let's Teletalk. Medication therapy with psychiatrists, all of those things will continue to be available to our students. And we will have some limited in-person sessions that will be available, really keeping in mind social distancing and making sure that it's safe for both our students who might be coming in as well as our staff. On student health, Hurtado Health Center is open now, and it will continue to be open, given that there are fewer students on campus, and we also will be using telehealth modality there. We're only going to have Hurtado Health Center as the only health center that will be open for the fall. We will have also a combination of in-person, because you can't do quite everything by telemedicine. You can do an awful lot and be really, really creative, but there are some things that you really need to have people come in for. And so we are available for that now, and we will continue to be available for that, for things like IUD placements, pap smears, lab work. Can't just come in now and you need an appointment now to come in for lab work. Before, you could just come in anytime from 8:30 to 3 and get your lab work done. Now you need to call, and we do a little screening, making sure that safety to come in, and then you will get an appointment. We will have both kind of sick and well waiting rooms, trying to make sure that there's safe distancing throughout the center as students come in to be seen. We will still be doing immunizations, and I'm just going to give a plug here that this fall, I'm sure you've heard of this, that as flu comes in with COVID, we want to be really careful. So we're going to make sure that and promote flu vaccines for actually everybody on campus, and particularly students. We right now are only using telephone for scheduling on student health side. We will be opening probably within a week the online services again. We just need to tweak that a little bit for safety reasons. Prescriptions you ask about, we've been using electronic prescriptions, and we can really send that to any pharmacy at all. Many people who had Walgreens or CVS, they do have a national chain of pharmacies, and it's real easy to transfer your prescriptions to a different location. If your prescription is greater than a year old, often you will need another appointment in order to have a new prescription. That's easy enough to do with the telehealth services. I just want to make a mention about telehealth. A lot of the regulations for cross-state practice have been loosened with the COVID pandemic. There are still some regulations, and so we can't do everything, all the therapy, all of the prescriptions, everything across every state. But many of the states, especially locally, it's really easy to go ahead and do that. However, for CAPS, if you can't do, because of those state restrictions and licensure restrictions, if they can't do individual therapy, anybody, no matter where you are, can participate with the workshops that CAPS will be giving. On our group therapy, we noticed the platform that we're using now, which is called DoxyMe, didn't have quite everything that we needed, and it was a little cumbersome, not quite able to get enough people on to have effective group therapy. So we will be changing to a different platform, and we're looking forward to that. Probably in August that will come through as a new platform, and I think it'll be a lot better experience for group therapy. Hope will do all of their workshops virtually, and they will continue to do all the content areas. An interesting observation on the pandemic is that one of the things that across the board people have wanted more information on is nutrition. It's not what I would have thought about, but that's what a lot of people are asking for. And so certainly we do have our nutrition therapists and our nutrition peer counselors that will work with students. So people can still arrange for those workshops. They will be done weekly on the many topics that they're already doing: stress, time management, myth and stigma of mental health, anxiety, etc. And they're also available to any organizations, residence halls, or Greek organizations to set up workshops. We can also do special workshops for folks. And they will continue with Campus Connect suicide prevention gatekeeper training that will continue to be offered. And something new, we were so excited, the pandemic hit, but we're still going to do it, which is peer coaching. We know that students like to talk to other students. We know that's really effective. So we do have now a peer coaching program that will take off. Its first pilot will be this fall. Rapid HIV testing will continue on, and all of our outreach, we're going to be coordinated through marketing and communication as disseminated, trying to work with social media as well as our website. I think that did it.
Thank you, Dr. Lasky. Those are very comprehensive answers. One quick follow-up, like, we can a minute or less. Just a lot of students from asking, with the budgetary cuts going on at the university, how can students be confident that services such as CAPS will not face a significant loss of staff?
I'm going to be really honest with you. In life, there is no guarantees. And I wish there was. I wish I could sit here and tell you there will absolutely be no cuts whatsoever, or that we're going to increase services. I don't know that. But what I can guarantee you is that Rutgers cares about our students. And we know that there are needs of our students, particularly around mental health and well-being. And we've seen, actually, in this spring and right now, we've seen the need and the activity within CAPS actually increase by about 30% compared to this time last year. So I'm pretty confident that as this need remains, the university will be sensitive to that, because we really do care about the students, and that our staffing will remain without really significant cuts.
Thank you, Dr. Lasky, for that question. So now we're going to move into some academic questions. So we're blessed to have the Provost and Vice Provost here with us tonight. So the first question is directed towards Provost Moghe and Vice Provost Moehling. In the spring semester, a pass/no credit option was for most students. So the first part of the question is, how many students actually utilized that option, and what was the overall impact? And the second part of the question is, for the fall semester, will this option be available for students who are still facing adverse learning conditions?
So Nicholas, just give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. Yeah, we good? All right. So I just want to first say thanks for all the students that are joining us on this panel and the great panelists that are with us as well. The first question that you asked us, right, is about this pass no credit policy for spring 2020. Now you all know, and I see a question by Simran Bagdia already on the Q&A on this one. So spring 2020 was a frenetic, crazy semester. We were trying to pivot mid-semester to a remote mode. And students know that our instructors were sort of scrambling to get there. So we adopted the pass no credit policy to allow students to continue their courses without, worrying about, how this would affect the GPAs. 13,000 students basically took advantage of that policy in the spring. And then we extended that policy to summer 2020 because the uncertainty of the public health situation continued. The instructors didn't really have as much time to make the switch to remote instruction. And now we believe that for fall 2020, a couple of different things are happening. Number one, the instructors now have had more time to prepare for the remote instruction model. And I'll talk about this a little bit if there's time. The other thing that we're thinking of is, although the pass no credit grade policy was immensely helpful both to us and the students in the spring and the summer, students that have repeatedly taken these pass no credit policies have actually felt the disadvantages of it. And I'm going to speak to this in a bit, but I just want to first caution that signing up for the PNC repeatedly can be a problem for academic advancement for the students. And some students actually have written back to us saying, can we reverse our PNC grade back to a letter grade, because we took it under this sort of pressure. So I want to talk about two policies, Nicholas, here. The first policy that I think will be helpful instead of the PNC is that we are planning to extend the add drop date early on. So the last date to add a new course would be Friday, September 11th. And the last date to drop the course without anything appearing on your transcript is September 14th. So that's going to allow you about 2 weeks to decide if that new format, the remote format, doesn't work for you. You have extra time to decide in terms of adding or dropping courses early on in the semester. All right, so that's the first policy. The second policy that I think is particularly important, if let's say you take a class and there's some public health situation or some disruption that just doesn't go away. A student that might have an extended absence due to some illness or has the inability to complete courses, the work in a given course. So we were thinking that in a usual fall semester, you have until late October to drop a course with a W on your transcript. We have planned to extend that by a month to November 30th for fall 2020. And I think that will allow students more flexibility in terms of adjusting their schedules. So although you will have a W, you have the ability to retake this course again, get a good grade, complete the course, should you encounter this disruption. So I believe that these two policies might be a better option for students instead of signing up for just this pass no credit policy. You have to understand that certain graduate schools, for example, view the pass grade negatively. And sometimes admissions committees also look at it in a negative way. So the letter grade, on the other hand, is reflecting the student's performance in a course and their mastery of the course material. So we think that that's sort of a more robust and effective strategy to help our students to continue with the advancement. Also, if there's time to come, I'd like to tell you about the work that the instructors are putting in to make sure that the delivery of remote instruction is high quality, is more robust, and is more uniform in its quality in the fall.
So that's actually one of the next questions, Provost Moghe, so I'll ask that in a sec. We had a question from a student that relates to your earlier comments. So can you comment on, like, if students take a leave of absence, do they have to reapply to the school that they're attending, or how does that work for their own status?
Okay, I didn't quite catch the entire question, but is this about someone who's been disrupted and now is considering deferring and then wants to come back?
Correct.
Okay, so I think, Caroline, you might be able to answer this question. My sense is that we should have the ability for the students to come back without necessarily having to reapply.
That's correct. So a student who's taken a leave of absence and wants to come back for the fall should contact their school's advising office. All of the schools have procedures for students who've taken a leave of absence then to come and re-enroll. And it's not going through admissions, it's going through your advising office just to, again, bringing you back up to active status.
Thank you. And then following up on the Provost comment, there's a question about, the online education was difficult for many students. So how are you better preparing faculty to teach in online conditions? And if the quality of education decreases as a result, is there anything the student can do to report professor?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And again, look, this is an extremely important topic for us because the essential Rutgers brand is built around the world-class education that the faculty members, the instructors are all working on for the benefit of the students. So as the Chief Academic Officer for the institution, I can vouch for the fact that I have together with my teams, work with the deans at every level, the chairs, the undergrad program directors, the graduate directors, to make sure that the faculty members are stepping up to remote instruction for the fall. So the faculty members have all been asked to participate in training sessions, in workshops. These workshops are held by the University Offices of Teaching and Learning with Technology, as well as through the Center for Teaching Advancement and Assessment Research. We call it CTAR. You might be able to go to their websites to see what training the faculty instructors are going through, and as well as teaching and learning teams that are being engaged in every school in New Brunswick. So departments and schools are also engaged in this, have been engaged in this starting from late spring. So the entire summer is going to be focused on the teaching faculty leveraging technological tools, design interactive experiments to stimulate student learning and engagement. Also, the LMS courses are being designed in order to facilitate more collaborations among the students. Now, that's all the positive part of it. Now, in spite of that, if a student should feel like there are problems in the way that the course is being taught, the student might have a concern about the quality of instruction. They should do what they do normally. They should first contact the leadership of the department that is offering that course. So you just look up the department or the major, find the chairperson, the undergrad director, because they will be able to address those questions. If you feel as a student that the department is not able to address the problem, then contact the dean of the school, okay? Now, if you feel like the dean is not able to address it, or you just need guidance in terms of who to contact, reach out to me, reach out to my office, write to ndprovost@rutgers.edu, okay? And we will take care of addressing those concerns. I also want to touch upon this question you had about how do we offer our remote instruction to students if they are not here? You know that international students, some of them are not able to travel here. So I would say that we've asked our instructors to make sure that all remote curriculum has a sense of resiliency about it, so that many courses will be offered asynchronously. And so those asynchronous courses will be available to international students who might not be able to log in the middle of the night, for example, because of the time zones that they're in.
That actually was the next question about time zones and international students. Thank you for answering that in that statement. I'm sure that many folks saw today about the recent Trump reversal on the ICE policy, but that we were to ask about, the academics provost response, but just, since that's been alleviated in the current moment, I just wanted to ask you while you're on the line, if that policy is then revisited by the Trump administration in the coming weeks, what is your office planning to do to support international students that might have to take a more creative course load to retain their visa?
Yeah, so you might have heard, right, that just today, you may have heard the news. I think all of you are very socially savvy about the news, but you should know that we have been working extremely hard the past entire week. Our offices here, including Rutgers Global, was fighting this cruel policy, right, that ICE had tried to pass through. We've been participating in 3 different legal challenges. You may have heard of that we joined the amicus brief with Harvard and MIT. We had 2 other legal challenges that we joined in. We've also been working on lots of lobbying with Congress to fight this policy. So I think we're hearing some very positive news today. And I think all the international students on the campus should be receiving a note tonight, I think, or shortly, that this policy is being rescinded, okay? So I think that's a big hooray for the international students whose back we have. They're extremely important for the vitality of our institution, for our growth. I was an international student once, came to the US as an international student, and you can see that the investment in international students is going to reap dividends for the academia as well as for our society. So the international students should just look forward to getting that notification from Vice President Rick Garfunkel. It should be on its way tonight.
Thank you. Now there's 2 questions that I can ask like a 4-minute time frame. So the first is about data protection. So with many classes being online, using Zoom or WebEx, and other services, how can we be, ensured that students' data is not being at risk during these online classes?
Carolyn, you take this one?
Yes, I'm gonna take this one. So all of our faculty and staff are trained in FERPA, that's the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, which protects your student records. We understand that only people who have a reason to see your student record or any element of your academic performance should have the ability to do so. And we take that very seriously. All of the vendors that we work with who provide services, these technological services that we're using for online education, are also bound by those rules. We make sure that in our contract. In the way that you've asked the question, I know that there's also some concerns about ProctorTrack, which is a online proctoring service, and I know that was something that was a big concern in the spring about the recordings of students taking exams. And those two, again, they have to follow FERPA. We maintain confidentiality of our student records. That's something that's very important to us. We make sure that the vendors we work with are aware of that, and they protect your confidentiality as well. With ProctorTrack, for instance, the only individuals who can see those recordings are the instructor, and if there's an academic integrity investigation, that officer. Once a recording is used and it's no longer needed, they're deleted, they're destroyed. So we take that very seriously.
Thank you. And then many students have been asking about, a lot of STEM students, engineering students, those in the sciences, the vitality of labs in person. So I wanted to ask the Vice Provost and the Provost, with labs being an integral part of STEM students' education, how does Rutgers plan to maintain the quality of labs in the fall semester?
Yeah, we know that labs are very important components of many of our academic programs. We have decided that most laboratory courses, almost all, and I need to say almost all, the number of lab courses that will be in person, I could count on both of my hands at the moment for undergraduate, are going to be offered remotely. And that was a decision we made in order to protect the safety and health of our faculty and students and staff. And we also are worried about equity. We know that not all of our students can make it back to campus. We wanted to make sure that all students can progress towards their degree, whether or not they can make it to campus this fall. And so it was important for us to be able to offer all of the courses in the undergraduate program remotely. Now, if you think about a lab course, of course, the hands-on experience is an important component of it, but it's not the only component. And in fact, the important aspects of courses are designing experiments, analyzing the data, and those are things that can be done remotely. Faculty are also coming up with creative ways to help students experience the experiments. Some of our faculty are planning on live streaming themselves or a graduate student TA doing the experiment, so you can watch it in real time or a recording of it done in real time, so you can kind of see the pacing of the experiment, what takes a lot of time, what takes less time, all of that kinds of components. Faculty who do field experiments out in the field are going to actually do virtual field trips where they actually film themselves going out, let's say to the Raritan to collect a specimen and to test that specimen. So again, so students can at least see the way that it's done. And some of our classes are actually planning on recreating experiments that you can do at home with household items and supplies, so that you can actually do the experiment, see the reaction, obviously in a very safe way, so your parents aren't going to be concerned about that, so that you can have that experience. We also know that you do need to have the hands-on experience with the equipment and the materials. And so when we can safely come back to campus, our programs are going to offer students ways of making up those missed opportunities. So some of our programs are planning on building in those experiences in the next class in the sequence. Some of our programs are planning boot camps or sort of mini courses for students in their major so that they can catch up, so they're prepared for those advanced courses. So we really have put a lot of thought into how we're going to keep our students in those STEM fields moving forward.
Thank you. And then just, that was a great answer. Just to clarify, for academic labs, that's a, comprehensive. But for labs that are for credit or research labs, what is the status of those labs for students?
So credit for research labs, you mean like a student who's doing a capstone project in a lab?
Exactly.
Yeah, so this is a question, and I've answered this in the chat. This is something we're still exploring. Right now, we are gearing up. We are starting to get our research labs back up and running at Rutgers. And these are being phased in very carefully, very cautiously. We are going to explore, right now, undergraduates are not being allowed in the laboratories. We're exploring the possibility that that can change as we get further along in the process of reopening the labs. It's something under discussion. We know it's important for our undergraduate students. We know it's important for the other people who work in these labs. But again, we have to proceed cautiously. We have to proceed in a way that's going to protect all of the members of our community.
Thank you. So that's, about what we have for academics in the current part. We're going to have a few questions on campus culture for the next roughly 20 minutes, and then we're going to have the rest of the Q&A. So with that being said, just a brief question for Director Charette with dining. How is dining like takeout operating in the coming semester? And then is there the possibility of reciprocity between meal plans for off-campus dining options like the student centers or those providers that are not necessarily on meal plans?
Well, the way we most likely will be operating is that Bush and Broward will be everything. In other words, we have places on campus where you have meal equivalencies and you have takeout options, and in these two facilities, they'll probably be divided if we're allowed to have indoor dining, to be able to go to one place to have food made for you and sit down and eat it, and to go to another place to pick it up and pass right on through the building and eat it in a place that you find more comfortable or acceptable if you're not very comfortable with eating in a shared environment. As far as the number of operations that'll be open, as you heard from the Director of Res Life, there'll be very, very few students living on campus, and of those students who are living on campus, a very small percentage of those will even be required to have meal plans. So we're looking at very, very, very low numbers, and that doesn't allow us to open up a lot of different operations. And as far as reciprocity with other vendors on campus, I don't know that I can defer to Bill O'Brien. I don't know if he has an answer on this yet, because we don't know if vendors will be willing to come back to open the student center operations with a very small number of students on campus. So there may not be student center vendors, and there may be. I think this still has to evolve, and we'll have to find out what happens as we get closer to the opening of school. I mean, maybe Bill has more to add to that, but I don't see dining services having meal plans being used, in New Brunswick or someplace off campus.
And in the interest of time, I'll just jump in and say, Joe is correct. Certainly we're exploring that, but we need to look a little bit more in terms of the overall services that are being provided to answer that. Having conversations right now with our vendors.
Thank you. Thank you to both of you for answering that question. So the next question is pretty broad in scope. It's for Vice-Chancellor Mena, Dr. Morrison, Dr. O'Brien, Dr. Willams, Dr. Charette. So collectively, your offices employ a significant amount of Rutgers student workers. Is there any plan in place to hire Rutgers students again in the fall, and mainly students that rely on that work to pay for tuition and expenses?
Yes, I mean, we're committed to hiring students, especially if those job descriptions lend themselves to being fulfilled remotely. We're committed to hiring as many work study students as possible. And so while we may not be able to hire the same amount of students that we've hired in the past when we've been fully on campus, we are committed to hiring students, and we understand that that's a very important part of their college experience, both from the perspective of obviously paying for college and being able to support oneself through college, but also the experiences that students get by being connected with our various offices, both personally in terms of their personal development, but also in terms of their academic and success at the university when they're connected with an office and connected with other professionals at the university. So we do feel that it's very important that we be able to hire as many students as possible, but it's all going to be dictated based on, what lends itself to the remote environment. And then obviously those offices that will have some in-person services available will also have that opportunity as well. So can't tell you numbers right now, but just know that the commitment is there to hire as many students as possible as we go into the fall. Others?
Yeah, and we also have a working group that's looking closely at student employment and seeing what resources leverage across the board to maximize the student employment experience for everyone. We've got a question on recreation centers coming shortly, but we'll talk about how we're going to address that and provide some staffing as others student affairs areas will be looking to staff up, whether it's remote environment or not.
Yeah, and dining services, for the first time that I know of, we currently are completely closed. You can't buy a cup of coffee right now. So the vast majority of our staff has been laid off. The hope would be that as more students return to campus and volume increases, that we can bring back our contractual employees. And at that point, we would be able to start filling in spaces with students. But because they are union employees, they have a right to the first work that's available. So dining services has a very, very large number, hundreds and hundreds of contractual employees. And I think it may be difficult to bring every single one of them back to start the school year. So I can't say for certain that students will have jobs when we immediately open. But those are some things that we'll be negotiating, with unions and trying to work out possibilities for people to work as best we possibly can.
And I'll quickly jump in to reiterate what Dr. Mena said. Certainly there is a commitment there even for student centers and activities. We recognize across the board, certainly, the employment opportunities, as you said, is for financial reasons, et cetera, but the high impact that, students receive from those experiences are difficult to replicate in this fall semester. So what we can do to try to transform some of those responsibilities with the limited services that are there physically in person, but we're going to do what we can to also be part of that commitment.
This is Dan Morrison. Most of the staff who work in housing, I think most people know, are RAs, and we have 300 of them normally. With only being 25% occupied, we're only going to be probably hiring about 30% of our RAs for live in-person RA jobs. And we have notified all of the staff students about that. They may defer for a year and come back. There's no declining jobs or not declining jobs. If people don't feel comfortable coming back and working this closely with students, they may come back next year if they're eligible, meaning they're still a student. But the other thing that we are doing is we are launching a program you'll hear about for first-year students that will be virtual residence hall floors, and the virtual RAs will serve them while they're all at home. So we will be able to offer back a good number of student RA positions to students who will actually be living off campus themselves, but working with first-year students. So we're hoping we can get as many of those students back in the payroll system as possible.
Thank you. And then a question to, collective that group again on a different note. So Rutgers is ranked highly academically, but a lot of students come to Rutgers for its vibrant campus culture. So how are programming and activities going to function in the virtual environment? So, RHA, sports, clubs, RUPA, and then on that note, will centers and gyms be open to students?
So let me take the centers and gyms. We fully anticipate we'll be providing a hybrid solution when it comes to student health and well-being. We realize and recognize that, in the pandemic, and one of those ways to stay healthy is obviously eat healthy, to exercise, to make sure your immune system is as strong as it can be. And so, we have offered over the course of the summer lots of robust programming in terms of our online environment. We recognize that people are getting tired of being online and they want to get outdoors. We have a couple of executive orders from the governor's office that have already come out about opening outdoor spaces, return to sports outdoors, aquatic facilities. And so we're putting that language into our operating documents for the fall semester. We are still waiting for gyms and fitness facilities, but we anticipate those will be coming out shortly. And so we'll be able to provide a lot of active programming for people. However, it's going to be different than what we've had in the past. You'll have to reserve a space online because we'll be at smaller capacities inside of our facilities. There will be more spatial distancing outside of our facilities. There's probably going to be a hybrid in terms of what kind of sports we offer. Won't be contact sports, but there'll be skill-based sports so that people can maintain their skill level. When we do get the point of returning to full participation, they at least will have a bit of a leg up on that. And that's going to be different for each one of our sport areas. So we're exploring all of those options right now so that we can provide the best resource we can once school starts.
And let me just jump in terms of to answer the student center side of the house, as Dave talked about. certainly looking to balance safety, health and wellness, etc. As of right now, the 3 student centers that are looking to be operational for the fall is the College Ave Student Center, Livingston Student Center, and Bush Student Center. That also aligns in some cases to support the residential population that will be on campus, as well as recognizing the off-campus population, especially a high concentration on College Ave. The services within the student centers certainly is still evolving. As we talked about earlier, we're having conversations with some of our food vendors that are third-party owned. Will they be able to operate, and all the safety protocols and measures in place? Same with the overall student center operation, safety protocols, so physical distancing, but at the same time, how can we still provide that service within the center to study, to come and access Wi-Fi if off-campus is not working too well, and other variations of services that are within those buildings, including some other administrative offices that still will support students in person. And then I'll jump in also because the other part of the question in terms of the engagement and programming activities. Real quickly, I know RUPA was mentioned. Just to give a quick breath in terms of the initial introduction I had in terms of student centers and activities. For some that do not know, it is an umbrella of a number of high impact offices, which include major events and programs, which also oversees the RUPA, Rutgers University Programming Association. Also includes student involvement in terms of the support for our student organizations, as well as leadership and experiential learning, which provides a wealth of leadership opportunities, alternative breaks under normal circumstances, etc. So overall, and including the services within the student center that we will have, we're committed to finding the creative ways to engage virtually. We recognize that not everything that we typically do will translate very easily online, but we're being very creative and looking to still provide, that break for stressful classes, as RUPA likes to, provide, meet new people, meet new friends in different type of engagement opportunities virtually. RUPA alone, they're continuing, they're in the planning stages right now to look for all the, plan for all the virtual events that are out there that we can provide service for. Same with student involvement. How do we support our student organizations? And I can certainly get into that later if there's follow-up questions, how we're supporting them to engage virtually. And then in addition to that, leadership opportunities such as the Discovery Program, exclusive for incoming first-year students. We have our Lead Up Academy and some others that I encourage everyone to visit, sca.rutgers.edu. Also follow RUPA and any of the other social media accounts. We are continuously updating and providing information for all the vibrant activities that are going to roll out in the fall.
And let me say that, we all know that there's no substitute for an in-person experience. There's no way for us to be able to capture the full essence of what it means to be a student at Rutgers, but we're going to do our best. And certainly there are many lessons that we learned from the past spring, and we had some successes. But it's going to take students also partnering with us to make it work. It's a two-way street. And so we're going to do our part, but we certainly need students to engage with us in that virtual environment. We know that students feel comfortable in that environment, but we need them to engage with us to make sure that we are learning from this together, and that we're able to walk away and see what worked and what didn't work in the fall semester.
I saw Dan Morrison's mic go off a few times. If you want to speak, Dan, you can.
To let you know, with the RHA, which is the Residence Hall Student Government Group, they have presented a kind of a plan for what fall will look like with again, reduced occupancy. And we're still going through all of that, so I can't give you a precise answer yet, but they are taking into account where students will physically be living on campus, the ages of them, because most of these students are going to be returning students and grad students. There will be very few first-year students living with us. So that's kind of a different audience than what RHA normally kind of works with. So we're working through all of that, but that will be announced probably by mid-August.
Thank you. So we're gonna have two more questions about the for the panelists, and then we can go to the Q&A because I want to get those in because there's a lot of good questions in that docket. So Director Lee, this is a question for you. Rutgers prides itself on its inclusivity and respect for others. With online schooling now in place, it is logical to see how some students feel more comfortable to act or speak in certain ways that would not be allowed on campus. So how will Rutgers aim to maintain the level of inclusivity and halt any harmful actions, words, biases used by students who could hide behind their screen? And how can students report such behavior?
Thank you, Nick. Absolutely, Rutgers does pride itself on its inclusivity and its respect for others. Within the Division of Student Affairs, as well as for Rutgers overall, we really do value creating an environment for an environment of inclusion that really respects and affirms the inherent dignity, value, and uniqueness of all individuals, communities, and their perspectives. And so to that end, collective responsibility, we're going to continue to do what we always have done, right? In this realm, nothing changes in that if things had happened in person or in the online realm, if students were to report them through our bias incident report mechanism, which goes to our Dean of Students office and to RUPD, there is a bias incident response team that then reviews all of the incident reports that come through and follows up as needed. And so, you know, and feel free, Dr. Newman, if you want to add anything in terms of the Dean of Students response, but that really doesn't change, right? And the engagement online certainly doesn't change as well, because that's been happening and it will continue to happen even more so. What that means, though, is that all of us, we all play a role, right? And each of you plays a role and has a level of responsibility to each other as colleagues and as peers, but also from the reporting side, to be able to share that and report up as needed. And we as staff definitely have our responsibility to be responding to those concerns and addressing them as they come up. So none of that changes at all. And you can certainly connect with a number of the different campus resources related to that. But again, I'll put it in here, it's bias.rutgers.edu is where you would report. And I can also share my email if you have any further questions about that. Dr. Newman, I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that.
That was pretty good, G. I will say our numbers have increased a bit. You know, in the online realm, we did see when we went remote, some Zoom bombing, and RUPD was very involved in those cases. So I would echo what Director Lee said, just if you send that information to bias.eu, it really helps us track that information and see what kind of postvention information and also preventative education we can continue to provide to the university community.
Thank you both for that answer. That was very good to hear. So we have a question for off-campus housing. So Director Willson, this is going to be towards you. Many students are confused about the parameters to which off-campus life will operate, which is Greek life, bars, etc. So would you be able to shed some light on off-campus life will be effective for the fall semester? And then a follow-up question, how would a student be able to find off-campus housing in this leasing process? And then a question that was very popular, how is the food pantry operating during the fall?
Sure, thank you. So, you know, our office is still, you know, working with students closely. We have students reaching out to us and asking questions about current leases that they have, whether or not they can get out of their lease. And then we have other students who are looking to us to help find housing off campus. So right now, primarily, we're helping connect students with their landlords and with student legal services to help them, navigate sort of where they are and what it is they're looking for. As far as, working with students living in the off-campus community, and, you mentioned bars and things like that, we will closely follow what the governor, puts in place in terms of indoor dining and, whether or not establishments such as bars can open. But we're also going to do a lot to educate the community about how they can be part of the solution to help stop the spread of the coronavirus. And obviously we're very concerned about student behavior and students, perhaps not taking it as seriously as they need to in regards to keeping themselves and others safe. So the bonus for me is that I always find that Rutgers students are brilliant and do really great things and make good decisions. So I'm looking forward to working with our students to really have a positive experience off campus. We want students to recognize that when they're living in the off-campus community, they're not just guests here, but they're part of that community. And so there are non-students who live there as well. And so what are we doing to keep each other safe, both, from a health perspective and from a safety perspective? So we will certainly work with RUSA and other groups on campus to make sure that we're doing our best to educate the community. Questions about Greek life have also come up in the Q&A. So in a moment, I'm going to throw it to my colleague because Dean Arnholt, because she can better answer those questions. But I do want to get to the other things that you've asked. So as far as students looking for housing off campus, we have a wealth of resources on our website and a company we work with that lists what is available in the off-campus community. So students are welcome to call us or email us, and we'll help them navigate that process of looking for housing off campus. But we also don't want students to sign a lease without having it reviewed. I don't want students thinking that they can sign a lease for a semester. Typically, they're a year-long contract. So we want to make sure students understand what their rights are as they enter into any agreement like that. As far as the food pantry goes, currently we are operating by appointment only. We are working from a remote location over at the College Ave Student Center. And for right now, we'll continue to do that for the rest of the summer. And then for the fall, we will operate by appointment only, whether or not we're still in the Student Center or at another location. Just follow our social media and we'll let you know that information. We're also running a mobile food pantry on Thursdays, which has locations on Bush, Livingston, and Douglas campuses. And it's been great. We're working with the Rutgers Garden Student Farm and able to provide students with produce, as well as market bucks, which are vouchers that students can use to purchase produce at the New Brunswick Community Farmers Market. So we're still here, and we plan to be here in the fall to support students as needed. And we welcome any student. They just need to log in and make an appointment with their Rutgers ID. They don't need to show proof of need. If a student needs the food pantry, they're welcome to come and utilize it. Some of the questions that came up about Greek life, I'm going to throw it over to Dean Arnholt so she can answer those for us.
Thanks, Kerri. And thank you everyone for having us. I can give you some general information about fraternity sorority life. We really just have started communicating with the students this week, obviously, since the announcement came in. But for the most part, our expectation for fraternity sororities, as with all other recognized student organizations, is that our expectation is they will be operating remotely. So chapter meetings, ritual meetings, any service activities, anything that they're doing on behalf of the chapters needs to be done in a remote fashion. I know there's some question about housing too, and we do have a number of housing units in town that are privately owned by the groups or rented by the chapters. Those are continuing to operate. We are not sure yet. We haven't been notified yet specifically what their capacity is going to be, but we've been working with the house corporations since about April, trying to provide them with resources to reopen safely if that's their choice to do that. as have their national fraternities and sororities, been providing them with resources. They've been working with their their insurance companies who have been also helping them with safe practices. So those things are in place. For students who are concerned about moving back, our advice for them is to really contact either the chapter advisor or the House Corporation president and communicate with them about their lease and what provisions they may have to be either be removed from the lease or to get some relief from that lease. So I think all those questions need to be directed to the House Corporation folks or the National Fraternity or Sorority. And anyone who has any more specific questions certainly can contact me at the office, and we'd be happy to answer any questions about anything about Greek life.
Thank you both for that answer. So we have about 20 minutes left that we're going to do for Q&A. And I'd like to preface this by saying that there are over around 200 questions that were put forth in this time frame, some of which were overlapping. So there's a good chance we won't get to all the questions in this time. But for those that logged in via WebEx, your email was recorded when you registered. So in the next week, we'll be sending out follow-up emails to all those that were on this call, answering those questions in somewhat of a comprehensive manner, as well as putting the contacts for those here tonight if you have follow-up questions for the panelists. So as a preface, your question might not be answered in this time frame, but we are going to answer it in the next week or coming week. So thank you for that understanding. With that being said, there are a few questions we want to hit upon that were asked by many students. So one of which was prevalent. This can be towards Director Berry. It's talking about the actual term bill. So why is it if students are taking online classes, they're still being charged the campus fee, computer fee? What are those fees used for? And is there a possibility of having those removed in the coming term?
Sure. So just to provide some clarity, that financial aid doesn't assess the fees that are charged by the institution. So that is a university-wide decision on what the fees will look like. I can say that courses that would strictly be in New Brunswick that have an online course fee, I believe of $100, those will not be charged for the fall. All of the other fees, I believe, are currently being assessed. Term bills have not been released yet for the fall semester. There will be, I think, clear delineation and explanation on what the actual fees will be going to for services at the university. So I do know in the next week or so, term bills will be released, but that's not a decision at the financial aid level. That's a university decision on the charges.
Thank you, Director Berry. Yeah, please.
And at this particular point in time, tuition rates are set for the upcoming year, as well as some of the specific fees as well. So those are established and all set for the upcoming year, as far as I know at this particular point in time.
Thank you. There's a question for the academic, folks in the room, to Provost Moghe, about those that are taking classes at community colleges or other schools. So what is your office doing to help students that are at community colleges to transfer, and how is students community college to transfer and be approved for the upcoming semester?
Yeah, so I'm going to let Carolyn Moehling take that question because she can offer some specifics, but I just want to make an important point here, Nicholas, which is that we have worked to strengthen the Office of Non-Traditional and Transfer Students. And the goal is to try to have a much easier system so that the students that are outside can better figure out how they negotiate the Rutgers system, which sometimes is a problem. The second thing is to make sure that the schools that admit these transfer students develop a more seamless system for them to get into Rutgers. And the third thing is about adjusting to Rutgers when the transfer students are in here. And all of these challenges got even more exacerbated during the COVID-19 pandemic. So Carolyn, if you are back on the non-muted state, maybe you can address the other part of the question, which is how do transfer students avail of access to Rutgers in this somewhat unprecedented, challenging time?
Sure. So I think the question is about our current students wanting to take courses at other institutions during the fall. And as always, when you're taking a course at a different institution, you should make sure that you check with your advising teams in your schools and in your specific academic programs to make sure the courses you're taking at other schools will transfer and meet the requirements that you're trying to meet here at Rutgers. So there is a pre-approval process in most of the schools for doing that. If you're taking courses at New Jersey community colleges, though, we do have transfer agreements with all of those schools. And so you can go on to NJ Transfer. You can do a search on NJ Transfer, and it will tell you how all the courses in the New Jersey community colleges will transfer to Rutgers New Brunswick, so that you can figure that out in advance. I know that many students are thinking about doing that. I understand the financial reasons for wanting to perhaps take a course at a community college. We understand that. It's just important that you make sure that you know that the courses you're taking at the community colleges will transfer to Rutgers and meet the requirements that you're trying to meet here at Rutgers.
Thank you. And then a follow-up question on academics that we got from a few folks that are non-traditional, mainly folks that have children, so students with children. Are there any considerations being taken for those populations that might have, the obligation of parenthood as well as academics, and how are they going to be helped in the following semester?
Yes, I did answer this in the Q&A. We do have a Students with Children group. I put the link to the website there. It is some support services for students with children. And we also, our Office of Transfer and Non-Traditional Students works with that population. And I encourage students in that situation to reach out to either me, the Vice Provost of Undergraduate Education, or Jason Moore, who runs that office, as the Director of the Office of Transfers and Non-Traditional Students, to talk about what other kinds of services you need so that we can work with you to figure out how to help you succeed in the fall semester.
Thank you. This is a question for Dr. Lasky about health. We have students asked about contact tracing. So for those that are on campus or around off campus, will there be a place they can come to at Rutgers for contact tracing or getting COVID tests?
Okay, two different questions. First of all, contact tracing is actually the responsibility of the Department of Health and local health departments. But we know that they've frequently been overwhelmed. So actually, we've been working to develop a system with the governor's office that Perry Hakaitis, who is the Dean of School of Public Health, is training. You may have seen training programs for contact tracers for the Department of Health. And we've been in contact with them to develop contact tracing for Rutgers itself. And just this past week, we met with the governor's office and local health department in Middlesex, as well as with Camden counties. And we have a cooperative and collaborative arrangement. They have some additional contact tracers that we will be able to access. We've worked on communication between local health departments and Rutgers back and forth because it really is important in order to try to have containment on Rutgers to do the contact tracing. If a student tests positive, or a faculty, anybody, and the either occupational health or student health finds out about it first, if we've ordered the test and we get it back, we will do an initial notification and kind of some emergency changes in the environment, so roommates or whatever, and that student would then be isolated. And then we would also contact local health department and work together for the rest of the contact tracing. That's a great question. I'm so happy I actually have an answer for it because we've been working on it for quite a while. Testing, let me go over that one as well. This is an ongoing issue. We will be using saliva testing. We've already started with testing with the student athletes, with the School of Nursing, DDDC, with a pharmacy student, so healthcare workers students are facing right now. We have a committee that is called the, I can get this right, it's called TPAC, but it's Targeting and Prioritization Action Committee. Couldn't remember the name of it, love all the acronyms. That is led by Dr. Brian Strom, the Chancellor of RBHS. And that group is charged with identifying the groups and prioritizing groups for testing. We are not doing testing overall. We don't think that that's the way to go, but we do want to target and prioritize folks to be tested on all of our campuses, and then be able to ratchet up as we may need to. We don't know what's going to happen. Right now, our levels are low. Our reproductive rate, so the R naught is less than 1. When that goes above 1, we get into more problems with one person who's infected and they're going to infect additional folks. So we're watching that very carefully. Just one more point on that one. The students who are coming back, I will tell you to come into residence halls. We will be testing those folks prior to coming back, and then when they do come on campus, we will be testing those folks. Repeat testing, we don't know right now. That's where we are. We were really looking at this from a scientific standpoint and just what's happening in our communities itself.
Well, thank you for that answer, and thank you to all the folks that are working on that very important issue at the university. We appreciate the hard work done on that front, so thank you. This is a question for Dr. Charette. For students that have current dining plans, can they cancel those plans, and how would they do so?
Yes, the policy for canceling has not changed at all. They have up until the first 2 weeks of when the semester starts to modify or cancel their meal plans. They can also add one at any time during the school year.
Thank you. This question is also for the Vice Provost or Provost, talking about the Office of Disability Services. So how will those accommodations take place in the fall? And will there be an option for proctors and breaks without a time penalty for students that have the need for those services?
So the Office of Disability Services is providing their full range of services remotely this fall. They have posted a document with guidelines for how accommodations will work in the online environment. So if those are accommodations that students need, those would be accommodations that they would receive. I would encourage any student who has accommodations to be reaching out to the Office of Disability Services now to figure out how they should plan for the fall, and then be working right away with their instructors in the courses that they register for, to make sure that those accommodations can be enacted immediately at the beginning of the semester. That's always important to do, but it's particularly important in the online environment to make sure that the students are getting the resources that they need.
Thank you. This is a question now for G. Lee, talking about the cultural centers. So are the cultural centers operating at all in the fall, or how are they working among those student groups to make sure that those campus communities remain vibrant, even if virtual?
Hi, Nick. Thanks for that question. So the cultural centers will be operating in alignment with the university guidelines on staff, on the staff working status, which currently has a staff working remotely, right? So the cultural centers, our buildings are physically closed right now, but we all are working remotely. Students can access us, so on and so forth. And so what this means is at the moment, this is how we will be operating until we hear any further notice. In the event that the university does have us return to some kind of in-person capacity, the centers, while they may remain closed, students can certainly schedule in-person appointments with us, and we could work those types of things out amongst the staff. So you would just have to contact each of the centers and work with the staff separately. So it's not 100% certain as to our full operational status for the fall, but that's what it's looking like at the moment.
Thank you, G. Lee. This question is for Vice-Chancellor Mena with Student Affairs. So it's from a few workers that are asking about the claims on the university earned sick leave. So what is Student Affairs doing to accommodate students that work there and are waiting for their benefits through the NJ earned sick leave program?
Thank you, Nick. My understanding is that those benefits don't apply to our students, in part because the university, as the place of employment, never closed. The university's been open this whole time, while there have been adjustments that have had to be made to our operating status, in part because of no students being on campus. The university continued to be open. So my understanding is that that those benefits don't apply to students who were not able to continue to be employed by the university this past spring, in part because, again, the university continued to be open. So that's what I've heard in terms of the interpretation of that particular benefit and how it might apply to university workers.
Yeah, Nick, if I may chime in here on this, the word leave is in the name of it. and a leave is a leave from work. So the way it works with the state is if you're going to take a leave, you need to be on someone's work schedule, right? You're asking to be excused from the workplace. So if there's no work schedule up that your name is on, there's nothing to take leave from. So in the event of operations that are completely closed and no one's working, that just doesn't even apply.
Thank you for the answers. So we'll do one or two more questions in the time frame, then we'll close out the town hall. So a question is directed towards Dean Arnholt with off-campus housing or the fraternities and sororities. Some students are concerned about the aspects of rape culture, other sexual assault problems, even though they're not living on campus. So what is your office doing to encourage folks to be safe and not engage in those kind of practices during this fall semester?
Good question, thanks. We're certainly aware of all the allegations that have been brought up in the last couple of weeks, and we've been, as we always do, but we've been working more closely with VPBA in the last couple of weeks. In fact, we met this morning. We're going to be rolling out some increased and more requirement for programs for our members, as well as participating in the upcoming listening. Newly elected council officers, they were all elected in April, and so as they would come back to school and they begin to take over their role as council leadership, we'll be asking them to also engage in these topics and take some leadership in addition to what the office will be doing.
Thank you. And then a question for Dr. Willson with off-campus housing. Student asked about, is there anywhere the students can go currently to find landlords that are willing to negotiate rents or cheaper prices, or how is your office recommending students go about the leasing process during this time?
Sure, thank you. I am not aware of, well, I know of one, Premier Properties. Any student who had signed a lease with them prior to March 18th were offered the opportunity to have their space held for the fall semester and move in January. I'm not aware of any other landlords who are really in a position to offer something like that. A lot of our landlords are what we would consider like a mom and pop operation. Somebody owns a house and rents it out. They rely on that income. So we're in a really challenging situation because I get it from the student perspective. If you don't have to live in New Brunswick, it's really challenging to pay rent for a space that you're not living in. But the other challenge is the person who owns that house has to pay a mortgage, has taxes they have to pay. So it's really, really challenging. So our suggestion always to students is to contact the landlord and see if there are any opportunities that students are being afforded. So, is there a reduced rent? If a student is choosing to not live there at the end of their lease, they can actually use their security deposit to pay the last month or month and a half's rent. Just knowing that if there are any damages or anything like that, they'd be liable for those as opposed to it getting taken out of the security deposit. So there are some things that through the state that are helping students. So again, like we encourage students to contact us so that we can walk them through what they may be eligible for. And then if they're, there's a certain clause that is in some leases that may give people the opportunity to get out of a lease because, their financial situation has changed. But it's really case by case basis because there is no standard lease for the off-campus community. So it's sort of, you have to look at it with Student Legal Services to determine that. And then what was the second part again? Did I answer it already?
Yeah, you answered both
okay.
questions. You did great.
Okay, good.
Thank you for that answer. So
Nick, can I add?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to add, Kerri mentioned at the end Student Legal Services, and they've been very busy the last 2 months going through and reviewing leases. So it's definitely worth a shot to contact them, as well as off-campus living and community partnerships. And if there's a hardship issue, again, where maybe you want to come to campus, but you're afraid you can't pay your lease, or you need some additional funds as you before your job starts or any insecurity issues, contact the Dean of Students office, because if it's an issue of 1 month or 2 months rent, there are some options for you if you feel you really need to come to campus or you have no other options of getting out of your lease. Go talk to the Dean of Students office as well.
Thank you both for the answers. So it's just about 9 o'clock, so we're going to wrap up the town hall. I just want to say, to all the panelists, thank you for your time. Thank you for coming. We really do appreciate having you guys speak on these very important issues to the student body directly. There's a power in getting students the answers while they're here, so we appreciate your time and efforts to that end. And then for students on the call, thank you for coming. This is possible because you guys came in and wanted to get your voice heard. So we're going to be emailing out unanswered questions from this town hall to our respective panelists, as well as their own contacts in the coming days. You can reach out directly. And then I'll be sending an email to you all, and maybe folks that weren't able to stay for the entire time, the town hall, so we can get those answers out to you. So my email is president.rusa@gmail.com, and you can find the actual town hall recording on our Facebook page, RUSA on Facebook. And I'm looking forward to working with you all in the coming year. Your student government's here to help you. We want to support you, as is the school. So thank you again for your time. This was a very informative town hall. I look forward to working with you all in the following year. Have a great night. Stay safe. Be with your loved ones, and be well. So thank you.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Ruth. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Have a